On March 21st, 2013, it was announced that Sony Pictures Entertainment would sign on Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg to direct and produce The Interview, with Seth Rogen starring. The film would follow a talk show host and a producer who would fall into a plot to take out the North Korean Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un. The film was in development since the late 2000s when Goldberg, Rogen, and Dan Sterling joked about what would happen if a journalist got the chance to sit down with Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden. The first iteration of the script was inspired by this premise and would follow a fictionalized dictator in a fictional country, but Sterling scrapped it following the release of Sacha Baron Cohen's film The Dictator, which Sterling remarked cornered the market on Middle Eastern tyranny jokes around that time. And as a result, Sony executives, Goldberg, and Rogen all asked him to rewrite the script, with later iterations focusing on the second Supreme Leader of Korea up until his passing in 2011 and the eventual succession of Kim Jong-un. The trio felt that it was more humorous to focus on Un because of him being closer to them in age, and aimed to both make the film more satirical than their previous films, while also deeply researching the North Korean government and society through reading nonfiction books and videos. The script will be read by an unidentified employee of the Department of State, and the film was made topically relevant following Dennis Rodman's visits to North Korea, who would later call Kim Jong-un a good friend. The film would be filmed in Vancouver between October 10, 2013 and December 20th, 2013. On June 11th, 2014, the teaser trailer for The Interview was released publicly for the first time, with a planned release date of October 10th, 2014. On June 25th, the official Korean news agency KCNA provided the first comments in regard to the film by an unidentified foreign ministry official. In the statement carried by the KCNA, the foreign official threatened retaliation on the United States and said, "The act of making and screening such a movie that portrays an attack on our top leadership is a most wanted act of terror and act of war, and is absolutely intolerable." And on July 7th, the North Korean state media sent a letter to President Barack Obama to halt the release of the film. While Obama didn't respond, Sony Pictures would. The studio delayed the release of the film from October 10th to December 25th, 2014, in order to remove certain scenes and regime-accurate military buttons that would be considered blasphemous by the North Korean government. This was the decision handed down by Sony's Tokyo headquarters, the first time co-chairman of Sony Pictures, Amy Pascal, received demands from them to make changes to the movie. And after much deliberation, edits were made. And that was that, until Sony executives, including Amy Pascal and Sony Pictures CEO and chairman Michael Lynton, received an email on November 21st demanding monetary compensation, or else Sony Pictures will be bombarded as a whole. That email was mostly ignored, treated as spam, or being glossed in their feeds. Additionally, Sony's Twitter accounts were taken over by the hackers, then referring to themselves as Cos Apostles, sharing images of Linton and Pascal as ghouls burning in a doomsday setting, with a message saying, "You, the criminals, including Michael Linton, will surely go to hell. Nothing can help you." Then, on Monday, November 24th, 2014, Sony was made aware that malware rendered the computers of numerous employees unusable, containing a warning from a group that called themselves the Guardians of Peace, threatening that their secrets would be shown to the world. The message also warned Sony to decide on their course of action by 11:00 p.m. UTC that evening. The hack wasn't taken too seriously at first, as one Sony supervisor called it a one-day problem, and Pascal calling it on the nose. That being said, employees at Sony were told to immediately shut down their computers, disconnect all their devices from Wi-Fi, and to not engage in any emails or downloads on the company's Culver City lot, which is a historic monument once owned by MGM and had films like The Wizard of Oz filmed on the premises. Executives began to set up a special room in their Gene Kelly building, plot out a plan of action as the deadline proposed by the hackers was fast approaching. But once the studios allowed the deadline to pass, they didn't experience any immediate retaliation from the hackers. Everyone felt a moment of relief. Pascal continued to attend meetings with executives, agents, and talent until offices shuttered that evening for the Thanksgiving holiday. On November 25th, a message was sent out signed by Pascal and Linton saying, "We want to thank you for all your hard work, innovative thinking, and positive attitudes as we work to resolve the system disruption that we are all experiencing." But little did they know, hell was in fact waiting for them. On November 25th, 2014, 4 of Sony's movies, which at the time were not fully released, were posted to pirated websites. Those films included the 2014 adaptation of Annie, Still Alice, Mr. Turner, and To Write Love on Her Arms. And in the coming weeks, additional information was leaked including the script of the James Bond film Spectre, as well as pilot scripts for other Sony television shows and films. On December 8th, the Guardians of Peace released their fourth leak of information. And following the release, a Sony employee walked in Amy Pascal's office and informed her of this. She then decided to call as many people as she could remember who could be impacted by this leak to apologize to them. As nearly 5,000 email exchanges of Pascal, including emails from Sony CEO Kazuo Hirai, hundreds of exchanges with talent and executives, and emails with Pascal's former boss and controversial producer Scott Rudin. In some of the non-Rudin exchanges, Pascal would email Walt Disney CEO and Chairman Bob Iger regarding a potential scenario where Marvel Studios could produce a trilogy of Spider-Man films, while Sony would retain creative control, marketing, and distribution, as well as include Spider-Man in a third Captain America movie, instead of giving up the rights to the property to Disney, something that fans have long demanded for years. In another set of email exchanges, Sony talked with Nintendo to make an animated film based on the Super Mario Bros., a film which would eventually be placed on turnaround and given to Universal and Illumination, and with other Sony executives detailing future plans and ideas regarding many of Sony's franchises and upcoming films. Other email exchanges were revealed, including that Sony executives were aware of Charlie Sheen's diagnosis of HIV as early as March 10, 2014, despite him never telling them about it and prior to him coming out about it publicly in November 2015. And other details were revealed, including lobbying that occurred with the Motion Picture Association of America to mandate IP address blocking of pirate and linking websites. But the email exchanges that really changed everything for the staff and talent who worked with Sony were the emails between Amy Pascal and Scott Rudin. In their exchanges with Rudin called Angelina Jolie a minimally talented spoiled brat in a camp event with a rampaging spoiled ego, after she requested that David Fincher directed her in a scrapped film about Cleopatra, which Rudin believed would have interfered with Fincher's plans to direct the 2015 film Steve Jobs, which he ended up not directing. In another email exchange, Pascal and Rudin discussed an upcoming encounter Pascal would have with President Barack Obama, which would be determined to be very racist. In the email exchange, the duo suggested mentioning films about African Americans that purely depicted slavery or the pre-civil rights era to the president, such as Django Unchained, 12 Years a Slave, and The Butler. The emails caused Pascal and Rudin to publicly apologize, as well as saw Pascal call the White House and the Reverend Al Sharpton, who publicly denounced Pascal upon the leaks of the email, to apologize, as well as held emotional meetings with Sony staff. On December 16th, the Guardians of Peace would mention the interview by name for the very first time and threatened to commit acts of terror during the film's New York City premiere at Sunshine Cinema on December 18th, as well as any theaters that would release the film during its wide release on December 25th. AMC Theaters, Bowtie Cinemas, Carmike Cinemas, Cinemark, Showcase Cinemas, Regal, and several independent theater owners announced that they would not screen the interview in their theaters. As a response to the threats and responses by the theaters, Sony Pictures would immediately provide security to the producers and stars of the interview, canceled all media appearances tied to the film, and stated that they would allow theaters to opt out of showing the interview before they would eventually decide to pull the wide release altogether, stating that there were no further release plans to release the film on any platform, including home video, for the foreseeable future. On December 17th, U.S. government officials stated that they believed that North Korea was centrally involved in the hacking, despite debates within the White House questioning if they should make this finding public, treating this as a serious national security matter. They will base these claims on similar malicious hacking tools and techniques previously employed by North Korean hackers, including cyber warfare carried out by North Korean agencies on South Korean targets. The FBI would later clarify this information by revealing that at one point, the hackers would log into the Guardian of Peace's Facebook account and Sony servers without hiding their proxy IP addresses that originated within North Korea. The KCNA would deny that the hack had any North Korean involvement, calling them wild rumors, but would say that the hacking into Sony Pictures might be a righteous deed of the supporters and sympathizers with the DPRK in response to its appeal. The North Korean government would offer assistance to the United States in a joint probe, threatening the United States if they refused their offer and continued with their allegations. The United States would in fact refuse and requested investigative assistance from China instead. The day following the FBI's accusation, the FBI received an email allegedly from the Guardians of Peace linking to a YouTube video titled, "You Are an Idiot." Days after the FBI's announcement, North Korea suffered a nationwide internet outage, which the country claimed to be the United States' response to the hacking attempts. On December 18th, 2 messages allegedly tied to the Guardians of Peace were released. One sent privately to Sony executives, the other posted to Paceman. which was used by the hackers for previous messages. The hackers said that the studio had suffered enough and could release the film only if Kim Jong-un's final scene was not too happy, stating that the company could not test them again, and if the studio makes anything else, they will be here ready to fight. A day later, President Barack Obama would hold his end-of-the-year press speech, where he would comment.
The FBI announced today that, and we can confirm that North Korea engaged in this attack. I think it says something interesting about North Korea that they decided to have the state mount an all-out assault on a movie studio because of a satirical movie starring Seth Rogen. I love Seth, and I love James, but the notion that that was a threat to them, I think gives you some sense of the kind of regime we're talking about here.
The North Korean National Defense Commission will release a statement following the speech accusing Obama of being the chief culprit who forced the Sony Pictures Entertainment to indiscriminately distribute the movie. On December 23rd, Sony would announce that on Christmas Day, the interview would release across an estimated 300, mostly independent theaters, and would also release the film on video-on-demand platforms on December 24th. The film would go on to generate an estimated $31 million in online sales and rentals, and $12.3 million at the box office. No further threats or incidences occurred following the release of the film, but the whole situation was seen as a threat to free speech, with several Hollywood filmmakers, actors, television hosts, and commentators criticizing the hackers' actions and Sony's decisions to stop the wide release. To this day, the world is unsure if the hack really needed to happen, and most importantly, if the interview was the film worth the time of any hacker, politician, government, or executive to put that much time into. But the things that are sure are that this hack showed us the inner workings of a massive film studio ran by executives who were, in a way, hacks themselves, as well as the damages that this caused Sony Pictures, its employees, and the talent involved.